What is happening, beautiful people? If you're watching for the very first time, welcome. My name is Aman. Guys, I want to talk about something that's really important. It's probably one of the most important steps in your Amazon business, and that is paying your supplier. I can tell you from experience, if this is the first time you're jumping in Amazon, it's the first time you're actually sending money to a supplier, it's nerve-wracking, it's very stressful. So I'm hoping I can alleviate some of the pain by showing you guys how to properly vet and pay your suppliers. And this is what I do. This may or may not work for you. It's totally up to you. But the idea is to avoid getting scammed by suppliers. So this is just a presentation that I was working on, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. So let's get started, shall we? So guys, let's get some myths out of the way first, okay? Those of you that go on to Alibaba, there's this thing called gold certification. Okay, gold certification doesn't really mean anything in the terms of the way you probably think it is. And here I've written, Gold Suppliers is a premium membership for suppliers on Alibaba.com. Members are provided with comprehensive ways to promote their products, maximizing product exposure, increasing return on investment. So what gold certification does, it just gives them access to a bunch of tools on Alibaba.com. It doesn't really mean anything in terms of, if a supplier is better than a non-gold certified supplier. The other thing you need to realize is that gold certification has no bearing on how ethical they behave. It's got nothing to do with that. Again, this is just a tool that Alibaba uses for their suppliers. In my opinion, gold certification is just a cash grab for Alibaba and gives these suppliers access to marketing promotional material for these companies, like I've already mentioned. Another myth you guys got to get out of your head is the fact that everyone in China is out to scam you. Let me explain something to you. Chinese suppliers are there to make money and build business relationships just like yourself. I mean, the Chinese have been doing business for years, decades, and they're very good at what they do. So I want you to keep that in mind as we're going through the presentation. So now that I've kind of talked about the gold certification, what do you do now? How do you vet suppliers? Well, this is how I vet my suppliers, okay? Alibaba.com ensures that every gold supplier is a legally registered company, and I only work with suppliers that have their gold certification. So again, this is kind of like a hypocritical statement where I said, gold certification doesn't really mean anything. It does in the sense for me that it forces suppliers to comply and be legally registered. That's important to me. Like, why would you want to do, business with a supplier that doesn't exist, not on paper anyway. So that's something to keep in mind. For me, a supplier must be in business for 5+ years. That's really important. In business, if you can get past 5 years in the plus, typically that's a very good sign that your business is going to be around a while. It's going to be very strong. I don't work with suppliers that are less than 5 years because it's just too risky for me. You don't know what the financial situation is like, especially if a business is first starting out in 2 years. There's not really much to go on. So I like to work with suppliers that have a 5-year plus, years of business in them. Now, this next step is something that you could do either beforehand or you could do, like I do, is every quarter. So once I've established a business, I'll actually do factory inspections with inspection companies in that local area. They'll go and actually check on the factory, make sure everything's okay. Again, this is something you could adopt. This one's really important. You guys got to really do your research online. Make sure to see if this company or this business or supplier actually exists. Do they have a web presence? Do they have social media? Do they have a website? You can check Chinese business registries and stuff like that. There's so many things you can do to make sure that the company they're trying to deal with actually exists. Last but not least, this is really important. This is something that I plan to do either this year or the following year, is actually visit the factory. 2 reasons. One, to make sure that the factory is actually there. And second of all, is to build better relationships with my partners that I'm, doing business with. So that's something you should really think about. So now before you pay your supplier, there's some things that you really need to check out. You need to make sure the bank account, address, and the name matches the information provided on the invoice. So whoever you're dealing with, supplier A, supplier B, they're going to have, banking information. And then you're going to basically get an invoice. And hopefully on that invoice has got the banking information. It should match the information, the address, like I said, the bank name, the accounts, all that should match with the company's name and information. That's really important. Like, I do not do business with someone where I'm putting money into their personal account. That to me is too risky. I just don't do that. I only deal with the businesses that have real business accounts. And like I already mentioned, I never send money to a personal bank account, only to a business account. make sure the bank you're sending the money to exists or is a valid bank. It sounds really dumb and obvious, but it's really important. For example, if it's like XYZ Bank, go online to make sure that exists. You can check Google Maps to see if, that address actually exists for that bank. So there's so many things you can do to help yourself, gain that confidence that this is a supplier you want to work with. Vetting your suppliers properly, as mentioned earlier, will help reduce the risk when paying the supplier. And it'll calm your nerves as well. It's really important. Like once you've vetted your suppliers properly, you're going to be nervous about paying, but some of that should be alleviated because you know that the supplier is good. You know what I mean? Now, payment methods. Again, this is what I do. This is not something that you necessarily have to do. I wire transfer through the bank to all my suppliers. I've been doing it for 10 years plus, and I've never, ever had a problem. Why? Is because I vetted my companies and my suppliers and my manufacturers beforehand, so I've never run into a problem. This is my preferred method. In my opinion, PayPal is for amateurs, and most big corporations won't let you pay by PayPal because of the extra fees. I only use PayPal to pay for samples and stuff like that, or little bits of pieces here and there where I need it really quick. I can't stress that enough, that money transfers is the most accepted way of doing business worldwide. I mean, millions and millions of dollars are being transferred every day through our banks. There's also Alibaba Trade Insurance. I've never used it, but I can't really comment on that. But I got some other things I can talk about, later in the slides here. There's escrow. What does that mean is basically once you've set up your deal with your supplier, you put your money into sort of like a trust account. Once that shipment gets, to wherever or whatever the terms are, the conditions are, that's when the money gets released to your supplier. This is actually a really good way, but there's fees incurred, there's costs and stuff like that. Kind of like with PayPal, with all these extra fees and stuff. Alibaba as well, there's some fees. I just don't want to pay extra fees for no reason. And I don't really need to pay these extra fees because, like I said, I vetted my suppliers properly. And last but not least, understand the terms of service. If you have a problem or run to a problem, actually before you even get to that point, if you plan to use PayPal, Alibaba, escrow, or any of these other services, understand the dispute process because it's really important. What you may have heard, the protection that you may think you have, may not necessarily be the case, and I'll explain. So let's talk about PayPal. PayPal has its own dispute process, and these are some of the items that I thought were really important to talk about. Item not received. So in this case, the buyer is claiming they ordered and paid for an item, but it didn't receive it. So in case something like this happens, PayPal will probably step in. This is the one that really gets me though. Significantly not as described. In this type of claim, the buyer is stating that the item they received is significantly different than they expected based on the seller's description. For instance, maybe the buyer ordered a red sweater but received a blue one instead. So the point here is, guys, if you want to dispute something with PayPal, you better make sure that you have all the evidence and it looks good, because PayPal dispute process, and people I've talked to that have gone through it, it's not easy to do, and you're not guaranteed that you're going to win. That's something you really need to understand. There's so much BS that I hear about PayPal's this, PayPal's that, is very safe. It is and it isn't. Again, it depends on the circumstances, and you need to prove and go through a process. And it's not difficult, but it's not easy either. So you got to keep that in mind. Alibaba, honestly, I don't know much about it. Just some stuff that I picked out. Refer to Alibaba.com for details of their dispute process. But if a buyer submits a complaint to Alibaba.com and uses the dispute determination service provided by Alibaba.com, seller agrees that after Alibaba.com receives a valid complaint, Alibaba.com shall have the right to determine at its sole discretion the liability in connection with the dispute based upon the relevant evidence. And if Alibaba.com determines that the seller has committed a breach of the purchase contract, One Touch will be entitled to, on its own or in trust, a related partner refund to buyer for and on behalf of the seller in the amount up to the total sum of the frozen fund and trade insurance amount as set forth in the purchase contract. Basically what that's saying is they are going to, middleman this, but again, it's a process. You need to make sure that if you're claiming as a seller that this company has duped me, you got to prove to them how they duped you, why they duped you, with evidence. So I wrote on the bottom here, Alibaba cannot offer a refund entirely based on the buyer's request. That's basically what they're saying. Very often, quality issue are caused by disorganized buyers rather than the suppliers. That's something you need to understand. You know what I mean? Like, quality is on you. It's not on the suppliers. It's your product. You need to be held held accountable for them. So if you buying something, you don't take quality control into consideration, and you're going to now claim against the supplier, Alibaba can step and say, hold on a second here. I understand what you're trying to do here, but at the end of the day, this is on you, not on the supplier. You should have, done your homework or done XYZ. Keep that in mind. If you fail to properly specify clear quality requirements, you cannot claim a refund later on. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Like if you're trying to get money back for some failed product based on quality, and you paid for these qualities well in inspection or whatever it is, it's on you, unfortunately. You got to really understand that. Now, this is kind of cool. Alibaba can appoint a quality inspection company to approve or reject the order entirely based on industry standards. So if you feel that there was a quality issue based on these certain standards, Alibaba may step in. Again, may. They could reject it, they could approve it. So you need to keep that in mind. Trade insurance shall be considered a tool, but not a mechanism capable of reducing all risks involved. This is the most important statement here. Everyone on the net that I read, you got to pay by PayPal, which is false. You got to pay by Alibaba, which is false. I've shown you the reasons why, that just because you pay by those, two tools doesn't necessarily mean that you're protected. Okay, I just want to keep that in mind. Is there, a safe proof? Maybe, maybe not. If it makes you feel comfortable to use one of these services, by all means, go for it. I personally don't. So in conclusion, guys, you really got to do your homework. This is really important. You got to do your homework. You got to vet your factories. You got to look at the banking information like I mentioned, and you got to make sure that your product is up to par. All of that information is on you. That's not on anybody else. You need to take ownership of that. Millions of dollars of money is being transferred to foreign banks daily using wire transfers. I've already mentioned that. PayPal's for rookies and amateurs. That's my personal belief. Most big corporations don't even touch PayPal because of the fees incurred. Alibaba Trade Insurance is just a tool and no guarantee, like I've already mentioned. And most suppliers are there to do business, not to scam you, especially in China, stuff like that. That's really important. So guys, I hope you found some value in the stuff that I talked about today. This is some stuff that I've seen on Facebook posts and Facebook groups and stuff like that. I really want to kind of talk about it from my perspective. This is no way right or wrong. This is how I do things, and it's been working for me. Maybe some of this will work for you guys. But you know what? If you got any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them in the comments below. But I want to say, if you're watching this video for the very first time, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Please subscribe, part of the family. If you want to see more videos just like this, please click on the end of the sky. Of course, to my peeps, be you, stay optimistic, enjoy the rest of your night. Here's a big high five from me to all of you.